For all you fans of war horror movies, you're in for a treat. This film tells the story of the modern world's toughest mercenaries facing off against an invincible army of Nazi zombies. This film is the 2008 British release, Outpost. The story unfolds in Eastern Europe, a dangerous region plagued by perpetual civil war. Mercenary leader DC is hired by a man calling himself Hunt, a geological engineer, for a special protection mission deep into this hazardous zone. It turns out Hunt's mysterious backer has purchased a mineral-rich plot of land in the area and needs him to conduct a field survey. The mercenary's task is to ensure his safety. DC's team of 7 men promptly accepts the mission for a fee of $10,000 each. Little do they realize this seemingly routine and straightforward protection job will ultimately descend into a bloody massacre. Approaching their destination, they must proceed on foot through a forest. Not long into their trek, their comms headsets are suddenly hit by interference, emitting a piercing screech of static. DC immediately asks their communications officer, McKay, for the cause. But McKay is equally baffled, suggesting aging equipment might be malfunctioning. Since normal communication remains possible, no one pays it much mind, and they press on towards the mission site. They soon arrive at their destination, where a strange structure looms in a clearing. Cautiously moving closer, they discover it's an abandoned military bunker, instantly making DC suspicious of Hunt's true purpose for being there. However, their mission is solely to protect Hunt. What Hunt specifically does here is none of their concern, so DC doesn't press for details. He promptly orders Taktarov and Jordan to stand guard outside while the rest follow Hunt into the bunker. But just as they begin exploring different sections of the bunker per Hunt's instructions, Taktarov and Jordan outside spot a sudden glint of reflected light in the woods. Assuming it's hostile, they immediately open fire towards the source. Hearing the gunshots, the others rush out from the bunker to provide support, yet they find no trace of any enemy. As DC questions Taktarov and Jordan about the situation, their comms experience another wave of interference. McKay moves to shut down the comms device, but a bullet strikes his shoulder. His teammates scramble for cover, firing blindly into the woods as they still cannot see any enemy. DC urgently orders them to cease fire, demanding they at least identify the enemy's position first, while the medic rushes to treat McKay's wound. Unexpectedly, the moment they stop shooting, the forest falls into an eerie silence, showing no sign of anyone being there. Yet Taktarov insists emphatically that he hit one of the attackers. Given this, DC orders him to go confirm the kill and check for any other hostiles nearby. With the others covering him, Taktarov charged into the forest and soon returned safely with an eerie message.
It's nothing.
That is strange because McKay was clearly hit by an enemy bullet. Growing increasingly uneasy, DC immediately finds Hunt and urges him to finish his business quickly so they can leave. He points out their position is dangerously exposed in a clearing surrounded by forest, making it highly vulnerable to attack and difficult to defend if enemies strike again. DC again stations 2 men outside on guard while the others re-enter the bunker to assist Hunt in his exploration, prioritizing finding a generator. Initially, DC didn't care about Hunt's purpose here, but the situation has changed. His man is wounded, so Hunt's business is now his business, and he demands Hunt tell him the truth. Hunt confesses he isn't here for geological surveying at all, but to find something specific, though he doesn't specify what that something is. Meanwhile, as Pryor and Jordan explore deeper into the bunker, they spot a crucifix in one corner. This unnerves them both, as military bunkers shouldn't normally contain such items. At that moment, DC and Hunt finally locate the generator. However, due to its age and long disuse, Hunt isn't sure if it can be started. While the 2 men work on the generator, Cotter makes a shocking discovery elsewhere. In a well-concealed small room, the walls are densely covered in bloody handprints. Slowly panning his flashlight beam around the room, Cotter and McKay are horrified to discover it is filled with piles of bodies. If not for their hardened mercenary nerves, they might have been terrified on the spot. Most terrifyingly, the corpses appear disturbingly fresh. And even more unbelievably, there's a survivor among them. When the others arrive, they help carry the bodies out. Simultaneously, Hunt succeeds in repairing the generator. The pitch-black bunker is suddenly flooded with light. Illuminated by the lamps, Pryor spots another startling object, a flag hanging on the wall. It turns out this military bunker is a relic left over from the Second World War. There's no time to dwell on this. The immediate priority is identifying the survivor. But no matter how they question him, the man remains utterly silent, his face completely expressionless, as if brain dead. With no other option, the team gives up questioning him. DC pulls Hunt aside, asking if the survivor has any connection to him, given this is his mission site, but Hunt flatly denies any relation. Unable to identify the survivor, DC assigns McKay to guard him. The relentless chain of unexpected events has severely delayed their work progress. They had planned to finish the mission and leave before nightfall, but now it seems they must spend the night here. DC therefore orders men to set traps outside to deter potential enemy attacks during the night. Meanwhile, Hunt searches alone in a room. He opens a key box, retrieves a key, and then, consulting the bunker's blueprint, stealthily unlocks a hidden door. Hunt switches on the lights, revealing a strange machine. He excitedly compares it to a photograph. It's an exact match. This machine is clearly the objective of his mission. He then takes out a communication device and secretly reports to his backer. The item has been located. Authorize all necessary measures. And at this moment, McKay, who was staying by Guts' side, encountered something strange. A coin in his hand accidentally fell to the ground, and in the split second he bent down to pick it up. He saw 2 more pairs of wet feet beside Guts. After confirming again that he wasn't seeing things, McKay quickly picked up the weapon behind him, ready to shoot. But when he looked up, he found there was nothing beside Guts again, and DC, who had just arrived, happened to see this scene. But because the matter was too bizarre, McKay chose not to say anything, only saying that he was practicing his shooting posture. At the same time, Hunt, who was scanning the machine, also encountered something unexplainable. He was concentrating on operating the computer, not noticing a terrifying figure in a Nazi uniform that had suddenly appeared behind him. Then the computer malfunctioned for no reason, and an eerie sound came from behind. Hunt turned around, but the figure had disappeared again. Strangely, even though there was clearly no one outside, the steel door was eerily locked from the outside. And just then, a Nazi soldier reappeared behind him. Suddenly, there was another loud noise from the door. It turned out that DC had arrived. Seeing that he couldn't hide it anymore, Hunt had to confess to DC that this machine was what they were looking for. But DC didn't understand what use this pile of junk could be. Hunt, however, said it was a miracle in physics once proposed by Einstein in a bold theory called the unified field theory. Simply put, it unifies the 4 fundamental forces in nature: gravity, electromagnetism, the strong force, and the weak force. If successfully researched, it would be the greatest breakthrough in human technological history. The energy generated would not only solve the energy crisis facing humanity, but also push Earth's technology to a new level. It's said that Einstein dedicated his entire later life to this research. But just as he was about to find the answer, he immediately terminated the experiment and destroyed all research data. However, after that, the Nazis also secretly began this research. And the machine in front of them was what they used to manipulate the unified field. The room above was exactly where the bodies were found, so Hunt guessed that the Nazis wanted to use the bodies to control the energy generated by the machine. In other words, they were injecting energy into human bodies through some method to create a powerful army, thereby using it to win the war. DC found it a bit unbelievable after hearing this, but if what Hunt said was true, then the value of this machine would be immeasurable. Yet at this moment, no one knew that something terrible was about to happen. First, Jordan heard a noise from the room filled with bodies. When he went in to check, he clearly felt something evil behind him, so he was scared and quickly ran out. Then the speakers in the entire bunker started playing music for no reason. McKay couldn't turn it off no matter what, and the music only stopped after he finally pulled out the plug. But the terrifying things were far from over. A deafening roar split the night sky, illuminating the dark forest and revealing countless eerie figures. Seeing enemies approaching, everyone immediately opened fire with full force, and DC quickly led people out to support. This time was different from the day. This time they could clearly see the enemies. But strangely, the other side didn't fire back. They were clearly standing there, but the mercenaries' bullets couldn't hit them no matter what. Even more bizarrely, after a gust of cold wind, the enemies immediately disappeared without a trace. Taktarov disappeared with them. But none of the traps they set were triggered, so how did the enemies get through to take Taktarov away? Could it be that Taktarov ran over by himself? It wasn't until DC found a Nazi medal on the ground that he realized Taktarov had really been captured. But DC didn't have time to think about how they did it. He was more concerned about this medal from World War II Nazis, and this reminded Jordan that the bullet that hit McKay during the day was also from World War II. Could their enemies be a group of Nazi soldiers that no longer exist? DC immediately took the bullet and the medal to find Hunt, asking him what was going on. While surprised, Hunt randomly played a tape he found in the bunker, which recorded the entire process of the Nazis' experiments with the machine. As Hunt had guessed, they really injected the energy produced by the machine into the soldiers' bodies to enhance their combat capabilities. Theoretically, this is completely achievable. As long as the machine's energy is intertwined with the human magnetic field, they can come and go without a trace. Because such soldiers are themselves a form of energy, able to materialize, disappear into thin air, and even be immune to all physical damage. Bullets can't harm them at all. This explains why they couldn't hit the enemies just now, and why Taktarov was quietly taken away. It seems the Nazis really succeeded. The enemies outside are the super soldiers they created. It's just that because the technology was not mature enough, the energy provided by the machine was limited, making them unable to fight remotely, thus trapping them in the bunker forever. And because DC and his team's intrusion disturbed the magnetic field here, the Nazi soldiers reappeared. Seeing that DC was still a bit confused, Hunt had to explain it to him in another way. Now DC finally understood that their opponents were a group of ghosts that could never be defeated, so he was ready to pack up and run away immediately. But Hunt advised DC not to do anything stupid and handed him a stack of documents. When DC opened it, he found that it was information about his family. Unexpectedly, in order to take this machine away, they even threatened the lives of all the mercenaries' families. At this moment, although DC was extremely angry, he could do nothing about it. Hunt said that the company had sent people to support them, and they could leave as long as they held on until they arrived. No sooner had he spoken than a blood-curdling scream came from outside. It turned out that Taktarov was being tortured by Nazi soldiers, who stuck bullet casings into his body until he slowly died, in pain. Faced with these invulnerable Nazi soldiers, they had no way to stop it, and could only watch helplessly. Yet their defense is completely ineffective against such opponents, because Nazi soldiers can appear anywhere without a sound. And Wojtek had just finished adjusting his weapon when a Nazi soldier grabbed him from behind, and his fate was predictable. Logically speaking, if the Nazi soldiers wanted to, they could wipe out this group of mercenaries in minutes. But they seemed to enjoy the pleasure of killing their prey one by one, letting the prey die in fear and despair. Early the next morning, they were horrified to find that the bodies of their two murdered teammates had appeared in their position in a strange posture. An atmosphere of fear hung over everyone, and there was no way they could hold out until reinforcements arrived. To prevent their team from being completely wiped out, DC didn't care about anything else, and could only tell Cotter to forcefully take Hunt away. But Hunt said it was already too late to leave, because the Nazi soldiers would never let them go. Cotter didn't care. It was better than waiting to die here. He was just about to forcefully take Hunt away when a Nazi soldier suddenly appeared behind them. Hunt fired, but it obviously had no effect. DC and the others came running at the sound, but after the lights in the room flickered, the Nazi soldier vanished in an instant. Losing another teammate made everyone realize that there was no way they could escape. Are they just doomed to wait for death? Since they can't escape, they have to find a way to kill them. To find a way, Hunt played the Nazi tape again. This time they saw a familiar face in the footage. It turned out that the Guts they had rescued was actually a Nazi officer. Pryor couldn't stand it at that moment. He walked over and shot Guts right in the head. Just when they thought they had successfully killed Guts, they never expected him to come back to life. Pryor was about to finish him off when the lights in the bunker suddenly went out. When the lights came back on, Guts was gone, and he had also kidnapped McKay. When they chased outside following the screams, they only saw McKay's body. From the initial 8-person team to now only half remaining, no one knew if they would be next. Just as everyone was in despair, Hunt suddenly thought of a way to fight them. Since this machine can provide energy to the Nazi soldiers, it can also control them. Otherwise, such powerful ghost soldiers, once out of control, would also pose a threat to them. So he decided to restart the machine to see if it would work. But to be safe, they had to find a way to lure the Nazi soldiers as close as possible to the machine's range. The closer, the better. There was no other way now, so everyone had to take the risk. Hunt stayed to start the machine, while DC, Pryor, and Jordan used themselves as bait to attract the Nazi soldiers. To ensure the plan went smoothly, they prepared enough guns and ammunition and set more mine traps on the perimeter. Hunt was also preparing to start the machine. Everything was ready, and soon it was night, and the Nazi soldiers, led by Officer Guts, appeared as expected in their usual way. Facing these immortal phantom soldiers, the 3 mercenaries showed no fear. But at Guts' order, the Nazi soldiers launched an attack. Seeing this, DC didn't choose to shoot. Instead, he waited for them to trigger the mine traps.
Hold your fire. Firing! Fall back!
Sure enough, the mines couldn't harm the phantom soldiers either. With the enemies closing in, DC quickly ordered them to fire. The bullets had no effect, but they could draw aggro. The three kept shooting while retreating to the bunker, and surprisingly, the soldiers followed. But they were still far from their destination, so they had to keep cooperating, shooting step by step to lure the Nazi soldiers forward. But then an accident happened. Pryor was just a step slow when a Nazi soldier rushed out from the side and grabbed him on the spot. But Pryor was tough. He fought them hand to hand with his mortal body for several rounds until he was finally stabbed. His sacrifice greatly slowed down the Nazi soldiers' advance, allowing the remaining two to successfully lead them near the machine. At the same time, Hunt was ready. He seized the opportunity and started the machine. In the next second, a huge energy burst out around them. The Nazi soldiers froze the moment they were engulfed, then fell to the ground. Hunt's guess was confirmed. But before they could celebrate, the machine suddenly malfunctioned and stopped working. Without the machine's suppression, the Nazi soldiers began to stir again. DC and Jordan had to buy time for Hunt to see if he could restart the machine. But they didn't hold on long. Jordan was the first to be knocked down. DC was also accidentally ambushed, suffering severe leg injuries. He struggled back to the room only for Hunt to deliver the devastating news. The machine couldn't be restarted. Hunt found that there was a ventilation duct in the room to escape through, but DC's leg injury was so severe that he could barely stand, let alone climb into the ventilation duct. Knowing he couldn't escape, DC chose to stay. He resolutely opened the steel door and engaged in a final battle with the Nazi soldiers outside. Hunt took the opportunity to climb into the ventilation duct. Soon, DC's screams echoed through the entire bunker. Hunt finally crawled out of the duct, opened the door, and was horrified to find that Officer Guts had been waiting outside for a long time. In the end, he didn't make it out alive. By now, the 8-person team was completely wiped out. But the story was just beginning, because soon after, the support team finally arrived. They found the bodies in the bunker, as well as the Nazi officer pretending to be a survivor. Clearly, the same tragedy was about to happen to them. Well, that's it for this video. Thank you to all the fans for watching. We'll see you next time.